I'm Kismet. And before we begin, I need you to understand something. This is not a story about a king. It's not even really a love story. It's a story about a 7-year-old girl standing alone in the snow, clutching one crumpled dollar bill, absolutely certain her daddy is coming home. Because he promised. And in this world, some promises cost everything. This is Kismet, where every story finds your soul. Ellie Mae's toes had stopped hurting 2 hours ago, and she couldn't remember if that was good or bad. Her daddy had taught her about frostbite once, sitting by the fire in their little 2-room house on the edge of Crestfall territory, his big hands wrapped around a mug, his voice low and careful the way it always got when he was teaching her something important. She couldn't quite remember the lesson now. Her brain felt slow, like cold honey. She shifted her weight on the milestone, the stone marker at the crossroads of the old northern road, and she'd been standing here for 3 days. Her boots were split along both sides. Snow had soaked clean through her stockings 12 hours ago. She didn't move. She wasn't leaving. Her daddy had been very clear. When the war ends, Ellie Mae, you wait at the milestone. I will always find you there. He'd knelt down when he said it. He always knelt when he needed her to really hear him, got himself right down to her level. His eyes, one gray, one green, just like hers, steady and sure. And I will come back to you. The war was over now. Everyone said so, which meant Daddy was coming down this road any day. She just had to wait a little longer. Her stomach cramped, sharp and mean. The landlady had thrown her out 4 days ago. Your father's dead, girl. No coin means no room. Out with you. Ellie Mae had taken her $1 and her daddy's old canvas bag, and she had walked to the crossroads, and she had not moved since. The landlady was wrong. Simple as that. Daddy wasn't dead, and he'd promised. And Daddy, Raymond Cooper, soldier of the 3rd Southern Regiment, man who fixed wobbly chair legs and made the best cornbread in Crestfall, and never once in his entire life broke a single promise he ever made. Daddy did not break promises. She'd asked 43 people in 3 days if they'd seen him. 43. Nobody had stopped long enough to really answer. Ellie Mae's head snapped up. The sound came from the North Road, deep and resonant, military brass. But the crowd around her wasn't gathering to welcome soldiers home. They were running, men yanking their children into doorways, women pressing themselves flat against walls. A merchant knocked over his own cart trying to get inside faster. A man hissed at his son, "Eyes down, boy, you want to lose them?" Ellie Mae turned toward the sound. The wolves came first. She had never seen wolves like these. Massive, dark as shadows with eyes that caught the winter light and threw it back wrong. Too bright, too aware. They moved alongside the horses like they owned the road, like they owned everything the road passed through. The villagers stopped breathing, and then he came, the man at the front. He rode the largest war horse she'd ever seen, black, enormous, blowing great clouds of breath into the cold air. The man himself wore dark fur across his shoulders and armor that looked like it had survived things she didn't have words for yet. Scars crossed his face, one along the jaw, one through the eyebrow. His dark hair was loose around his shoulders. He looked like what happened when wars decided to become a person. The crowd pressed itself into the walls. Ellie Mae did the math. This man was powerful. He was coming from the north. He had soldiers with him. If anyone had moved through the northern territories in the last 3 years, if anyone had seen her daddy, she stepped forward. "Girl," a guard's voice cracked like a whip. "Stop, right now." "Do you have any idea?" She didn't stop. She walked right up to the massive black warhorse and she tilted her face up, way up. The man's eyes found her, dark green, deep like forest water, the kind of green that had no bottom to it. "Excuse me, Mr. King," Ellie Mae said. The silence that fell was the kind that happens right before lightning. "Have you seen my daddy?" Nobody breathed. A soldier's hand went to his sword. "Your Majesty, shall I?" The king raised one hand. The soldier stopped mid-motion. Ellie Mae, encouraged, continued. "My daddy is a soldier. He has eyes like mine." She pointed to her own face, to the mismatched eyes that had always made strangers do a double-take. One gray, one green. If you've been through the North Territories, you might have seen him. His name is Raymond Cooper. Everyone calls him Ray. Something happened to the king's face. It was small. A person who wasn't watching carefully would have missed it entirely. Then his jaw clenched. A muscle ticked once in his cheek. And then he dismounted. The crowd pulled back another 10 feet. Ellie Mae held her ground. He was even taller up close. She had to tilt her head all the way back just to see his face. But she looked, and she saw what her daddy had always taught her to look for first. Kind eyes mean good hearts, Ellie. That's the only test that matters. These eyes were not cruel. They were tired, heavy. Looked like this man had been carrying something for a very long time and had simply forgotten what it felt like to set it down. He knelt. The crowd made a sound like a collective gasp. "How long have you been alone, child?" he asked. His voice was rough, like gravel wrapped in something softer underneath. 3 days, Ellie Mae said. "Daddy told me to wait here when the war ended, and you ended the war, didn't you?" He nodded once. "Then thank you," she said. "Or for ending it." And before she could think about whether it was appropriate, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. The king went completely still. Every soldier in the convoy went completely still. The wolves went still. The entire village still. Ellie Mae held on. "It's cold, child," the king said carefully after a moment that seemed to last a long time. "You should go inside." "I can't," Ellie Mae said into his collar. "Daddy's coming, and I have to be here when he comes down the road." She pulled back, looked at his face, saw something there that made her stomach do a small, uncertain twist. "Mr. Your Majesty, can you help me find my daddy?" The crowd's collective inhale sounded like wind before a storm. Ellie Mae reached into her pocket, pulled out the dollar bill, slightly crumpled, slightly damp from the cold, held it up. "I can pay," she said firmly. "Daddy always says good work shouldn't come free. I can pay good money." Honest. The silence stretched. A heartbeat. Another. And then Alpha King Caden Blackwell, destroyer of kingdoms, conqueror of the North, a man who had never in his adult life been spoken to by anyone who wasn't afraid of him, reached out and took the dollar. "All right," he said. He studied her hands, her split boots, the blue tinge at the edges of her lips. "Come with me, child. You'll eat. You'll be warm." Ellie Mae shook her head immediately. "If I leave, Daddy won't find me." Something moved through the king's face, a shadow. "If your father returns—" "When?" Ellie Mae corrected. The king's jaw tightened. "When?" He said it like it cost him. "I will leave word. He will know exactly where to find you." Ellie Mae studied his face for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. "You promise?" she asked. "I am the king," he said quietly. "My word is law." "Then I'll come," she said. Behind her, the village released a breath it had been holding for 60 seconds. And Ellie Mae took the hand of the most feared man in the known world and decided he was probably going to be fine. She didn't know yet what his word had already cost him. She didn't know yet what finding her had cost her daddy, but she would. And when she did, nothing in her small, certain world would ever be the same. Princess Savannah Cole had spent the last 3 months perfecting the art of hating someone quietly. And it was, she'd discovered, a full-time occupation. She stood in the fortress courtyard with her spine perfectly straight and her chin precisely level and her hands clasped behind her back, the picture of a composed southern princess. Nobody watching would have guessed that beneath her carefully maintained exterior, she was running through, For the 400th time, every single decision that had led her to this moment. 3 years of war, her kingdom, the Coal Territories, with 3 generations of her family's blood and sacrifice reduced to ash and negotiated terms, and her, Savannah Cole, 28 years old, last daughter of the Southern Line, traded like a chess piece for the promise of peace. She was marrying him. Alpha King Caden Blackwell, the man who had taken everything. A noblewoman shifted beside her, leaning close. "They say he crushed the last resistance in 3 days flat," she whispered. Savannah didn't turn her head. "Efficiency," she replied, and her voice smooth and pleasant, "is the hallmark of tyranny." The woman fell silent. Savannah allowed herself exactly 1 second of satisfaction. She had met him once, the formal engagement ceremony 3 months ago. Their advisors had done all the actual negotiating, while Savannah stood on her mark and stared across the vast throne room at a man who had destroyed her world. He'd looked at her. Just once. One long, assessing look from those dark green eyes. And she'd stared back with every ounce of defiance she had. What had infuriated her, what she had absolutely refused to examine since, was the small, traitorous part of her brain that had noticed he was beautiful, the way a blade was beautiful, precise, deadly, completely aware of its own capability. She had buried that thought so deep it should have suffocated. It hadn't. The gates opened. A massive black wolf stepped into the courtyard. Savannah had prepared herself for this. She knew what he was. She knew about the shift. She had told herself, repeatedly, that she would not react. The wolf's shoulders came level with a tall man's chest. Its fur absorbed the thin winter light like it was made of shadow. Its eyes swept the assembled crowd with terrifying intelligence. And then Savannah saw the child. She was tiny, sitting on the wolf's back like it was the most natural thing in the world, wrapped in a cloak 3 sizes too large, her face pinched with cold. But she was looking around at the fortress with enormous eyes, taking everything in with the concentrated attention of a child filing things away for later. Savannah blinked. She was absolutely certain she was imagining it. A guard stepped forward with a heavy cloak. The child climbed down carefully, and the wolf moved behind a carved screen near the gate. Moments later, the man emerged. Alpha King Caden Blackwell. He was taller than she'd remembered. Dark hair loose around his shoulders, damp with melted snow. Armor set aside. He wore a simple dark shirt and riding leathers, and he moved through the courtyard like every inch of space automatically belonged to him. Those eyes swept the assembled crowd, found hers. For one long moment, they looked at each other across the stone. His expression didn't change. But something moved through those green eyes, something she couldn't name and immediately didn't want to. "Princess Savannah," he said, and his voice carried the courtyard without effort. "Your Majesty," she replied. Perfectly glacial, perfectly polite. For just a fraction of a second, something shifted in his expression. Disappointment. Then it was gone. He turned back to the child and lifted her easily into his arms. The contrast hit Savannah in a place she hadn't expected. Those hands. She knew what those hands had done. She had read the battle reports, studied the campaign maps, and she knew exactly what those scarred hands were capable of. And right now, they were cradling a 7-year-old with the careful deliberateness of someone who was afraid of doing it wrong. The girl looked up at the fortress. "Your castle is pretty," she announced. The court murmured. Someone suppressed a laugh. The king said nothing. He carried the child toward the platform, and the entire assembled court of the North watched their conqueror, their feared Alpha King. So carry a small girl in a too big cloak, like she was the most important thing in the room. "Who is she?" someone whispered nearby. Caden's voice was flat and final when he answered the court's unspoken question. "She is under my protection." The girl beamed up at him. "His Majesty is very kind," she announced to everyone. "He found me at the crossroads, and now he's going to help the hungry children and the hurt soldiers, because that's what he promised, and the king's word is law." Silence, and the kind that falls when a child has said something that cannot be unsaid. Because 3 months ago, a council member had proposed opening the fortress to war refugees. The king had refused, flatly, finally, without discussion. And now this child was telling the entire assembled court the opposite. Savannah watched Caden's jaw tighten, watched the calculation move through his eyes, watched him make a decision. "Prepare the guest halls," he said, his voice controlled, "where any wounded soldiers or displaced children seeking refuge will be admitted." The Queen Mother, tall, elegant, standing to his right, went visibly rigid. "Your Majesty," she said low and sharp, "this was not—" "It is now," he said. He didn't look at her. He was looking at the child in his arms, who had gone bright with satisfaction. Savannah stood very still in the courtyard as the assembly dispersed around her. She was trying to build a sentence in her head that made sense, and the tyrant she had prepared herself to hate had just been unmade by one small girl with a dollar bill in mismatched eyes. "Who are you?" she thought, watching him carry the child inside. "And what on earth am I supposed to do with you now?" Ellie Mae woke up on her 3rd morning in the palace and stared at the ceiling. It was painted, dark blue with tiny gold stars, like someone had caught the night sky and pressed it flat above her bed. She missed Daddy, not in the chest-hurting way. Just in the normal way, the way where she wanted to tell him about the ceiling and the boots that fit and the fireplace that stayed lit all night without anyone adding wood. And she had to ask the king if there was any news. She dressed quickly and went looking. The hallways were enormous. Her footsteps made sounds that came back to her slightly delayed, like the palace was answering her. She peeked into rooms, soldiers doing drills, servants carrying linens, a man shouting over maps. She kept walking, and then she almost walked directly into the most beautiful woman she had ever seen in her entire life. The woman wore a dress the color of deep water. Her face was the kind of face that belonged in the fairy tales Daddy used to read her, precise and striking and somehow sad around the edges, in a way the stories never quite captured. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Ellie Mae said. "I wasn't watching." "It's quite all right," the woman said. Her voice was smooth, a little surprised. "Or are you lost, child?" "A little bit. I'm looking for the king. Do you know where he might be?" "The king is likely in the council chambers or the training grounds. Why do you need him?" "I wanted to ask if there's any news about my daddy." Ellie Mae remembered her manners. "I'm Ellie Mae." "I know who you are," the woman said, a slight smile. "I am Princess Savannah." Ellie Mae's whole face went hot with excitement. "The princess? The one who's marrying the king?" "That one." "Yes." "Oh." Ellie Mae clasped her hands together. "You're so beautiful. You're the most beautiful princess I've ever seen, and I can see exactly why the king is so in love with you." The princess's cheeks went pink. "Oh, I wouldn't say—" "Of course he is," Ellie Mae interrupted. It was obvious. "And you must love him very much, too, to be marrying him." Something crossed the princess's face. Complicated. She looked away briefly. "Come," she said quietly, "and I'll walk with you." They walked together, Ellie Mae taking 2 steps for every one of the princesses, and it was perfect. The king was a hero, and he was marrying a beautiful, kind princess. And soon Daddy would come home, and they'd probably all live here together like a real family. The corridor opened into a courtyard. Cold air hit Ellie Mae's face. Then she heard it. A sharp crack, then another. She stopped. Then she saw him. A boy. Older than her, but not by much. Tied to a post in the center of the courtyard. His shirt was gone despite the cold. There were red marks across his back and a guard standing behind him with a whip raised. The boy's body jerked. He didn't scream. Something in Ellie Mae went absolutely still and then absolutely certain. "Stop," she said. Her voice came out louder than she expected. Every head in the courtyard turned. "Why are you hurting him?" she asked. "He failed his duty," the guard replied, and something almost amused in his voice. "Run along, little girl." Princess Savannah's hand touched her shoulder. "Ellie Mae, come. This is how things are done here. There's nothing—" "The king would not stand for this," Ellie Mae said. The guards looked at each other. One laughed. "You don't know the king, little girl." Ellie Mae's chest went hot. "I do know him," she said. "He kneels for people. He helps them. He's a hero." The guard raised the whip again, and Ellie Mae pulled away from the princess and walked forward. Fists clenched at her sides. She put herself between the guard and the boy, arms spread wide. She was shaking. She could feel it, but her feet didn't move. "No," she said. "What?" came a voice, cold and controlled. "Is the meaning of this?" Not a question. A verdict. The Queen Mother stood at the courtyard entrance, tall and elegant in dark fur. Every soldier straightened immediately. Her eyes moved across the scene, or the boy at the post, the small girl with her arms out, the princess standing 2 steps behind. Her gaze landed on Ellie Mae. "Why is this child in my courtyard?" "Ma'am," Ellie Mae said, because Daddy had always taught her to be respectful, "they're hurting him, and it's wrong." The Queen Mother's expression softened into something that looked almost like warmth. Almost. "My dear," she said gently, "you wouldn't understand. Order requires discipline. With respect, Your Majesty," Princess Savannah's voice cool and precise, "the boy has had enough." The Queen Mother turned. Her eyes held something sharp. "Your army lost the war, Princess. I wouldn't presume to lecture me on what is enough." She looked at the guard. "Continue." The whip rose. Ellie Mae didn't think. She pressed herself against the post, back flat against it, arms wide. "No!" The whip stopped, and then footsteps, heavy ones moving fast. "Explain. Now." Alpha King Caden Blackwell walked into the courtyard like thunder, deciding to take a shape. His eyes moved across everything in one sweep. The boy, the post, the guard with the whip, the Queen Mother, the princess. And then Ellie Mae, small and shaking with her arms spread wide and her chin up. "Mr. the King," she said, relief flooding through her so warm she almost stopped shaking. "You came." He crossed the courtyard in 4 strides and stopped directly in front of her. She had to tilt her head all the way back. "You wouldn't let them hurt him," she said, "would you?" She knew the answer. She felt it in the same place she felt the painted ceiling was beautiful and Daddy was coming home. "Your Majesty," the Queen Mother began, "weakness and discipline." "I will be the judge of that," he said, quietly. Finally. He didn't look at his mother. He was looking at the boy at the post. "Release him." The guards moved immediately. Ellie Mae let out a breath she'd been holding so long her ribs hurt. She looked up at Caden. "Perhaps you should explain to the guards that whipping is simply not acceptable. I don't think they understood, because if they had, they never would have done it in the first place." A long pause. Then, "No one in this fortress will be whipped again." The words landed in the courtyard like stones dropped in still water. Ellie Mae's smile got so big her face hurt. "Thank you, Your Majesty." And she hugged him, threw both arms around his waist and pressed her face against his coat and held on. He went completely still, statue still. But Ellie Mae didn't let go. "You're a hero," she said into his coat. His hand came down on top of her head, just for a second. Behind them, Princess Savannah stood at the edge of the courtyard with her hands pressed flat against her skirts. Watching a warlord stand there with a small girl wrapped around him, a not knowing what to do with his hands, finding his way to something that looked, from where she was standing, remarkably like tenderness. She looked away, but not fast enough. Savannah had prepared for this meeting for 3 days. She'd rehearsed her arguments until they were smooth stones she could turn over without thinking. She'd mapped every possible counter move. She'd dressed carefully, formal enough to signal she wasn't asking, composed enough to signal she wasn't afraid. And the war chamber was everything she'd expected. Smoke and steel, old maps covering the table with territories marked in ink that looked, from certain angles, like wounds. Caden stood at the table reviewing documents. Back to her. He looked up when she entered. Those green eyes. "Princess, Your Majesty." They sat near the fireplace. Too close. She was immediately aware of exactly how close. She could see the scar through his eyebrow, the controlled precision of his hands. And she looked at the marriage contract. "You had concerns about the terms?" he said. "Clarifications?" she corrected. "Article 7. The Temple of the Moon, my people's sacred site. It's listed in the territories but not explicitly protected. Be specific about what you need. I need it kept accessible, for worship, for ceremonies. I need it written, not implied." He watched her. "The temple matters to your people. Our customs—" "I never said I disagreed." She stopped, and he pushed a pen toward her. "Write the amendment. The temple will be protected. You have my word." She sat with the pen in her hand. She'd prepared 6 arguments. She needed none of them. "In exchange for what?" she asked. His brow creased slightly. "I'm sorry?" "Don't play dumb." The words came out harder than she'd planned. "People like you don't give things for free. What do you want?" Silence. "People like me," he repeated. "Conquerors." He leaned back. Something moved through his expression, not anger. "You're really unhappy about our arrangement. I did not choose it." "No." He was quiet for a moment. "Neither, entirely, did I." That surprised her. She let it show. He looked at the fire. "The girl," Savannah said finally, curiosity overriding caution. "Who is she to you?" His jaw tightened. "An orphan. Her father is dead. Flat. Final. How do you know?" He tensed, every line of him going rigid in a way that had nothing to do with the question's surface. "If he weren't," Caden said, each word measured, "he would have come for her by now." Savannah held that. She breathed in carefully, her wolf instincts, old and precise, reading what words wouldn't say. His scent, complex, distinctly wolf. No trace of the child in it, no blood connection. So why her? Why bring a stranger's orphan into the most fortified fortress in the north? "Ma, she is my responsibility," he said, like closing a door. Savannah decided to leave it, for now. "How do I make her feel safe?" She blinked. He was looking at the fire, not at her. His posture had shifted, something in it that she couldn't immediately categorize, uncertain. Alpha King Caden Blackwell was asking her for parenting advice. "Children don't trust proclamations," she said slowly. "They trust presence. If you want her to feel safe, it has to be you. Not servants, not guards. Well, you. I brought her here, and then disappeared for days." He didn't deny it. "You command armies," Savannah continued, her voice softer than she'd intended. "Yet you're afraid of what a 7-year-old expects from you." A long pause. "She believes I'm good," he said quietly. "But you don't," Savannah said. He looked at her, those green eyes direct and unguarded in a way that stole her breath. "You tell me, Princess," he said. "Should I?" The question sat between them, real, vulnerable, so entirely without armor. Savannah looked at this man, her enemy, her captor, the architect of her loss, and she found to her complete inconvenience that the answer was no longer simple. "I think," she said quietly, "that you could be. if you chose to be. Something moved through his face, hope almost. Then the careful walls went back up, but not all the way, not quite all the way. A month. Savannah stood at the corridor balcony and told herself she was simply taking air. And she was absolutely not watching the king. She was watching the courtyard, which happened to contain the king. That was completely different. Below, Caden knelt in the dirt beside Ellie Mae. His dark hair fell forward as he bent to her level. This man who made generals nervous, crouching in the mud with total concentration. "Breathe," he said. "Don't force it." "Tell that to her," Ellie Mae muttered. "My wolf is being extremely shy." "Your wolf isn't a different person, little one. She's part of you. Shifting just takes time." Ellie Mae considered this with the grave seriousness she applied to everything. "Maybe I'm just shy then," she said. And there it was, a sound Savannah had not once heard in 4 months at this fortress. Low, brief, completely real. A laugh. Caden Blackwell laughed. "You," he said, "did not seem particularly shy when you hired me." Ellie Mae giggled. "Kings do not kneel to children." The Queen Mother's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. Now she stood at the far edge, dark fur, cold eyes fixed on Ellie Mae with an expression that made Savannah's blood cool. Not irritation, not disapproval, calculation. "Beats bending double and ruining my back," Caden replied, not looking up. Ellie Mae laughed again. The Queen Mother's eyes didn't move from the child. Savannah stepped back from the railing and filed that look away somewhere she would return to later. Ellie Mae had engineered the dinner. Savannah still wasn't entirely sure how. One moment she'd been walking back to her apartments. The next she was seated at the private dining table with Caden at the head, the Queen Mother to his right, and Ellie Mae positioned between them with the satisfied expression of someone whose plan was working. "The new refugees who came today weren't scared," Ellie Mae said, helping herself to bread with both hands. "Not even the little ones. I told them you were very kind." She looked at Caden with shining eyes. He said nothing, but something moved through his face, warm, brief, immediately suppressed. The Queen Mother's hand tightened around her goblet. Savannah watched her. Dinner continued. The wine was poured. Caden drank his quickly. Too quickly. Ellie Mae was chattering about a child who'd managed a partial shift that morning. The Queen Mother set down her silverware. "I find I've lost my appetite," she said. Her gaze moved over Ellie Mae with a restraint that was somehow worse than open hostility. "Or good night." She rose, left. The room breathed differently. Ellie Mae reached immediately for more bread. "She's very grumpy," she observed, completely unbothered. "Don't talk with your mouth full," Caden replied. Ellie Mae swallowed. "Wasn't she grumpy?" "She's always like that." "That's sad." "Yes," he said quietly. "It is." Savannah looked at him. He was staring at his goblet, turning it slowly. He looked exhausted in the firelight, the deep kind of exhausted that sleep doesn't fix. "More wine," she offered. He looked up. Something in his expression, brief, unguarded. "Yes," he said. "Thank you." She reached across and poured, and their eyes held for just a moment. Then she looked away, and then his hand, pressed flat on the table, fingers spread, knuckles white. "Your Majesty." Her voice came out careful, even. "Are you all right?" He didn't answer. When he looked up, his eyes were wrong. Darker than the firelight explained. His breathing had changed. "Are you tired?" Ellie Mae asked. "You've been training everyone very hard." He shoved back from the table. The goblet went over. Wine spread across the white cloth like blood. "You both need to leave," he said, strained, forcing the words. "Now, please." "What's wrong?" Ellie Mae cried. "Annie." Savannah was already moving, reaching for the child. "Come with me, now." But she was watching him, his jaw clenched, released. A tremor ran through both hands, visible, violent. His breathing came in harsh pulls. His eyes had gone almost entirely dark. "Go," he managed. "I can't." His body bent forward, hands slammed the table, and then the transformation took him. Nothing like the controlled shift she'd seen wolves make. This was violent. Bones cracking and reshaping too fast, muscle tearing and reforming, his body fighting itself. Ellie Mae screamed, short, sharp. The wolf crashed to the stone floor, knocking the table sideways. Plates shattered. The wolf paced. "We're wrong," jerky, uncontrolled, claws leaving deep grooves in the stone, breath coming in harsh snarls, eyes wild and unseeing. "Come away," Savannah said, pulling Ellie Mae back. "Quickly, quietly. He needs help." "There's nothing we can do right." The wolf's gaze locked onto Ellie Mae. Savannah put herself fully between them. "Annie, don't move." Ellie Mae moved. She stepped out from behind Savannah and walked toward the wolf. Savannah stopped breathing. The wolf froze. Ellie Mae kept walking. Arms loose at her sides, impossibly small in that wrecked room, in front of that creature, and she pressed her hand against the wolf's muzzle. "It's okay," she said softly. "I've got you." The snarling faded. The wolf's chest heaved once, twice, and then the breathing began to slow. The wildness in those dark eyes flickered, dimmed, receded. The great body lowered itself to the ground. Ellie Mae kept her hand against his face, and Savannah stood motionless in the wrecked room, while watching a 7-year-old child bring a king back from wherever he'd gone, with nothing but her voice and her certainty that he was worth saving. The room was quiet. Ellie Mae had fallen asleep curled against the wolf's warm side. The wolf slept too, great chest rising and falling in slow, even rhythms. Savannah stood alone in the wrecked dining chamber with her thoughts. She crossed to the overturned table, crouched, breathed in the spilled wine, red, spiced, slightly acidic. She held the scent in her lungs and searched it. Something bitter underneath the sweetness, a chemical edge that didn't belong. She moved to the food, smelled everything in turn. She wasn't an alchemist, she couldn't name it, but she knew what she suspected. She went to the door, sent for her most trusted servant. "Collect samples from everything on that table," she said quietly. "Every dish, every goblet. Take them to the castle alchemist tonight, by order of the king. Then test for anything that should not be there, and send word to me privately." "How privately?" "To no one else." Her servant nodded and moved. Savannah turned back. Ellie Mae, deeply asleep against the wolf's warm flank, peaceful in the way children could be, even after terrible things. She crossed the room, slid her arms under the child, and lifted her carefully to the large carved chair in the corner. Then she turned back. She immediately wished she hadn't. Caden lay on his side by the fire. The shift had reversed. He was unconscious, and the firelight was doing absolutely nothing to help her situation. She kept her eyes fixed on her task, finding his cloak, bringing it over, draping it across him with her gaze fixed on her own hands. She was doing well, until she breathed in pine, smoke, warm skin. Her wolf went embarrassingly still inside her chest, the way it only did when it wanted something badly enough to stop pretending otherwise. Now she made the further mistake of glancing at his face. His eyes were open, green and heavy-lidded and very close to hers. He was looking at her, the way people look at things they want, soft and unguarded, and with every single wall down. His hand lifted, slowly tucked a loose strand of hair back from her face. "Nessa," he said. A smile, rare and unguarded, and absolutely devastating. Every coherent thought she possessed evaporated simultaneously. "Your Majesty," she managed. He blinked. An awareness returned. The warmth retreated. Recognition arrived, then the full weight of memory, all at once. His eyes swept the ruined room. His face went pale. "Where is Annie?" "Safe." She nodded toward the corner. He found the small figure, and the breath left him in one long, broken exhale. "I apologize," he said. "For earlier, What happened?" Savannah interrupted. Shame crossed his face, the last thing she'd expected from him. "It happens to me sometimes," he said, looking away. "Bursts. I can't control them. Ever since I was little." Savannah stared. It didn't fit. She'd watched this man for months. His control over his own body was extraordinary. This was not a man who lost control. "The fighting helps," he said quietly. "It channels it, gives it somewhere to go. My mother always said it was my nature, my wolf, unmanageable." He was ashamed the way someone was ashamed of something they believed was woven into their fundamental self, and something she suspected wasn't true at all. "So all these wars," she said carefully, "they were your way of managing yourself." "Not exactly." His eyes came up sharply. "No, not just that. He turned away. "Maybe it felt good, knowing there was somewhere to put it, while also being useful," she said softly. He met her eyes. "While being useful." She felt the response rise in her. The names of cities, the faces of her people. 3 years of war. She stopped, because she saw it then. And a boy who had been told there was something broken in him, who had found one story that made the breaking feel like purpose, who had never once been given a reason to question it. "There might be other ways," she said, not angry. Firm. He nodded. Slow. Heavy. Like something long refused finally being acknowledged. "Wars can't last forever," she added. "No," he said. "I suppose they can't." The fire settled. The room felt small, warm, far away from everything outside it. "Did I scare you?" he asked. "Earlier." "Yes." His face tightened. He looked away. "You didn't scare her, though," Savannah said quickly. "Ellie Mae. She was scared, but not of you. She was scared for you." She smiled despite herself. "She walked right up and put her hand on your face, and you just stopped." Caden looked at the child in the corner. "Other ways," he murmured, almost to himself. "Children have a way of changing things," Savannah agreed. He turned to look at her, and she thought, and briefly, inconveniently, about what it would mean to have his children someday. Heat rushed up her neck. "Or so I hear," she said, looking away quickly. He wasn't listening. His gaze had gone back to Ellie Mae, the warmth fading into something heavier. "What will you do?" Savannah asked quietly. "When her father comes back?" "He won't." "He might. Her father is dead." He said it the way people said things they knew, not believed, knew. The hair rose on the back of her neck. "During the war," Caden said, his voice dropping, "commanding troops is difficult when everyone around you has been trained into total obedience. They say yes to everything. It's efficient, useful. But there are moments when you need someone to tell you what they actually think." He paused. There was a soldier, Ray. Her breath stopped. Common man. Nothing remarkable on paper. But he was the only person in my entire army who told me exactly what he thought, every time, without checking whether it would cost him. "He wasn't afraid of you," Savannah said softly. "No." Something baffled and genuinely precious in his voice. He'd look me dead in the eye and say, "I think that's wrong, Your Majesty, and here's why." Like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You became friends." I wouldn't know how to recognize that. Quietly. "I've never really had one." He said it simply. No self-pity. Just a fact. He talked about his daughter every spare moment. Like she was the whole point. Like everything else was just what he did until he could get back to her. Savannah looked at her hands. "One day," Caden said, "above the Ardan Valley, late autumn, ground frozen hard." Savannah went very still. The Ardennes Valley. She knew that pass. She had spent 2 weeks with her father's best strategists designing exactly what happened there. Ray had been watching the ridgeline for 2 days, Caden said. He told me the morning before something was wrong. He asked me to change the route. You didn't, Savannah said quietly. I told him he was reading shadows. The fire crackled. We were halfway through the pass when the first wave came down. They'd been waiting above us, invisible. The second wave cut off the rear. He glanced at her. It was well conceived. The timing, the terrain, the way it prevented retreat. His eyes held hers. Quiet recognition. No accusation. Her heart beat very hard. Ray was 10 feet away. He had no reason to be watching me at that particular second, but he was. He looked at his hands. He moved before the arrow did. He understood exactly what he was choosing. He chose it anyway, Savannah whispered. I sat with him while he was dying. His voice barely above nothing. He wasn't afraid. He was concerned about whether I was injured. He said I had to live because I would do more good than he could. A beat. And then he asked me to find his daughter. The silence was absolute. So he told me her name, where she'd be waiting, the milestone on the North Road, and he said she had eyes like his, one gray, one green, so I'd know her. Savannah looked at the small figure sleeping in the corner. Oh, she whispered. You asked who she is to me, Caden said. She is the guilt I carry. If it weren't for me, she would still have a father. Savannah reached out, placed her hand on his arm. He looked down at her hand, then slowly up at her face. Raw and unguarded and entirely without armor. A small sound from the corner. They both turned. Ellie Mae sat upright in the chair, mismatched eyes wide and fixed on Caden. He's dead, she whispered. Papa is dead. Caden held her gaze and nodded once. Because of you, she whispered. He nodded again. Her small face moved through it, grief and shock and confusion breaking across her features like weather. And then it crumpled entirely. She burst into tears and ran for the door. Caden was on his feet instantly. Stop! Savannah caught his arm. She looked at the cloak barely held around him. You cannot chase a child through the corridors of your own palace like this. She needs a moment. He stood very still, staring at the closed door. Let her breathe, Savannah said softly. It won't help her if you go after her right now. You know that. He turned from the door slowly, like it cost him something physical. Sat back down in front of the fire. Savannah sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Neither of them spoke, and the night held them both. Ellie Mae didn't understand. That was the part that kept circling. She was curled behind the curtain on the 3rd floor, knees to her chest, cheek against the cold glass, and no matter how many times she turned it over, the pieces wouldn't fit. Papa was dead, except Papa couldn't be dead because Papa was Papa. Papa fixed things. Papa put his big warm hand on top of her head when she was scared, and that fixed the scared. Dead people couldn't do that. Dead people couldn't come home. Papa had promised. He had knelt down right in front of her and said, I will come back to you. Papa never broke promises, so he had to be coming home. Except Caden had nodded. She pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. Caden had nodded like he knew. She kept trying to find the piece she was missing, or the part where both things could be true. She kept turning it over the way you turned puzzle pieces over until they fit. They wouldn't fit. A sound came out of her, small and broken and embarrassing. She pressed her fist against her mouth. Don't, she told herself. Papa says crying doesn't fix anything. She folded forward and cried as quietly as she could. Child. Her head came up. The curtain had been pulled aside. The Queen Mother crouched there, which was also unexpected, not because the Queen Mother did not crouch, but right now she was at Ellie Mae's level, and her face was kind, soft, warm. the kind of warmth Ellie Mae hadn't seen from her before. "Poor little thing," she said quietly. Ellie Mae wiped her nose on her sleeve. "I know," the Queen Mother said gently. "I know what they told you last night." Ellie Mae swallowed. "I've been looking for you," the Queen Mother said, "because I have something to tell you, Annie." She leaned forward slightly. "Dear, your father is not dead." The words went into Ellie Mae's ears and simply stopped there. "What?" she whispered. "He's alive." The Queen Mother's mouth curved warm. "And I know exactly where he is." Something happened in Ellie Mae's chest, like when you'd been holding your breath for so long you'd forgotten what breathing felt like, and someone told you that you could breathe again. "Papa is alive," she said. Her voice came out tiny. "Yes." The Queen Mother reached out, cupped her cheek. And he misses you terribly." Ellie Mae's eyes filled again, the good kind, the overwhelmed kind. "I knew it." The words tumbled out. "I kept saying he wouldn't break his promise and nobody believed me, and I knew Papa never—" "Would you like to go to him?" the Queen Mother interrupted gently. Ellie Mae was already climbing out from behind the curtain. She was halfway down the back stairs when the thought hit her, and she stopped dead. Caden. "We have to tell the king first," Ellie Mae said. "He'll be so relieved, Annie." The Queen Mother's voice was patient, warm, careful. "The king loves you very much. You know that." "I know. He wants to keep you here." A pause. "He told you your father had died, so that you would stay with him." Ellie Mae stood on the step. She looked at the Queen Mother's warm face and tried to make those words fit inside the shape of Caden she kept in her chest. They didn't fit. "He wouldn't lie to me," she said. "Damn people do foolish things," the Queen Mother said gently, "when they're afraid of losing someone they love." Ellie Mae thought about Caden's face last night, the pain in it. "If we leave without saying anything," Ellie Mae said, "he'll think I'm angry. I'm not angry." "Your father," the Queen Mother said softly, "is sitting somewhere cold and alone right now, believing he will never see you again. Papa, cold, alone, waiting. Once you're with him, you can send word," the Queen Mother added. "Explain everything." Ellie Mae looked back up the stairs, thought about Papa's face, took the Queen Mother's hand. "All right," she whispered, "but I'll come back." "Of course," the Queen Mother said warmly. "Of course you will." They went through the garden, through the outer gate. The grounds beyond were frost-hardened, the tended paths giving way to scrubby brush, then gradually to trees. Ellie Mae had to take quick steps to keep up. Is it far?" "Not terribly," the Queen Mother said pleasantly. The path narrowed, then narrowed further, then became something more like a gap between trees where animals passed rather than people. Ellie Mae kept walking, kept the picture of Papa in her mind, his face when he spun her around, the warmth of his voice saying her name. The trees opened into a clearing, small, still. Snow lying in the shadows at the edges where the sun hadn't reached. Bare frozen earth in the center. Empty. "Papa," Ellie Mae called. Her voice came back from the trees. Just her voice. She frowned, turned. The Queen Mother had stopped walking. She was standing completely still and reaching behind her for a bow. Ellie Mae looked at it. Her mind felt strange, slow and fast at once. "Where is my Papa?" she asked carefully. The Queen Mother said nothing. She knocked an arrow with practiced ease. The shaft was black. The tip was darker still. Ellie Mae's back found a tree. "Oh, you said he was here," she said. The Queen Mother's expression was pleasant, patient. "History remembers victory," she said quietly. "It never remembers mercy." "I don't understand what that means." "Your death," the Queen Mother said, tilting the arrow to examine the tip, "will bear the mark of the Southern Kingdom. It will restart the war and restore order." Why would you restart the war? Ellie Mae whispered. It hurts people. War makes this kingdom strong, and it keeps my son powerful. Her eyes were calm, certain. And I will not have a foolish little girl and a conquered princess dismantle what I have spent his entire life building. Tears flooded Ellie Mae's eyes. Please, she whispered, I want my papa. The Queen Mother shook her head slowly. You'll be with him soon, child, she said gently. And something in the way she said it made Ellie Mae's heart lift for one small, terrible second before she understood. The bow drew back, and the string pulled taut. Ellie Mae pressed herself against the tree trunk, and she did the only thing she had left. Papa! The word tore out of her. Papa, please! Her voice came back from the trees, just her voice, and something in Ellie Mae's chest that had been holding on let go. Papa wasn't coming. She was alone in the forest, and nobody knew where she was. Caden! The scream ripped out of her, just as the Queen Mother released. Something hit her sideways, enormous and solid. And she flew sideways and hit the snow and lay there for a moment, stunned and breathless. Then she heard it. The sound that had cut through the dining room weeks ago, a cry that started as a snarl and broke apart in the middle, raw, ragged, someone fighting their way back from somewhere. The massive black wolf stood in the center of the clearing. The black arrow was buried deep in his shoulder. No, Ellie Mae breathed. She was across the clearing before she decided to move, throwing herself against his neck, her arms around him. You're fine, she said into his fur. You're going to be fine. His legs shook beneath her. She felt them shaking, those enormous legs. And then they buckled. He went down, first the front, then the back. Ellie Mae went down with him. His breathing was wrong, too slow, too far apart. Stand up, she said, barely sound at all. Please stand up. He didn't stand. Please, Ellie Mae said, and the forest erupted. Boots on frozen ground. In many of them, fast and purposeful. Savannah came through the trees. Her eyes swept the clearing in 1 second. The Queen Mother, the bow, the fallen wolf. Guards. Her voice was controlled, final. I am only going to say this once. Seize her. They did. Unhand me, you cannot. After you tried to murder a child under the king's protection, Savannah said, crossing the clearing fast. After you poisoned your own son. Was it an accident? Savannah said. That you have been drugging him his entire life? Making him believe he had uncontrollable episodes when it was you? All along it was you? You cannot prove. I already have, Savannah said simply. The alchemist sent his results this morning. The Queen Mother was dragged back. Mercy weakens kings, she screamed. Weakens empires. You will thank me, all of you. The forest swallowed her voice. Savannah crouched in the snow beside Ellie Mae. It wasn't your fault, she said quietly. Ellie Mae's hands tightened in the black fur. She pressed her face against the wolf's neck. He had come. He had heard her. He had come through the trees and taken the arrow for her. You showed up, she thought. You showed up. 4 days. Savannah had filled every hour of them with tasks, because tasks were the only thing standing between her and the particular kind of fear she absolutely refused to examine. Council meetings every morning, the Queen Mother's confinement overseen, refugee intake organized, correspondence answered, guards briefed. In the quiet moments she couldn't fill, she thought about green eyes saying her name in the dark. She pushed it away every time. On the 4th morning, she went to his chambers to check on Ellie Mae. That was the reason. The child was curled in the chair beside Caden's bed, face pale, still in a way that worried Savannah more than crying would have. Caden lay motionless under heavy blankets, breathing slow and shallow. Savannah settled into the chair beside Ellie Mae without speaking. He's going to be fine, she said. Nothing. Ellie Mae. It's my fault. A murmur. I went with her. Everyone trusted her, Savannah argued. She spent years making herself trustworthy for exactly that purpose. Ellie Mae looked up. You didn't trust her. Savannah opened her mouth. No, she said finally, but I trust no one. The ghost of something crossed Ellie Mae's face. Not even me? Savannah put her arm around the child. All right, she said. Perhaps you a little bit. Ellie Mae leaned into her, and Caden stirred. His brow creased. A man fighting his way up from somewhere deep and dark. Ellie Mae was out of the chair before Savannah could breathe. Caden! She stopped herself just short of throwing herself at him. His eyes found her. Tired, small, completely real. And then he smiled. Ellie Mae couldn't stop herself then. She threw her arms around his neck. Then he winced. Savannah was already moving forward, but he shook his head at her, barely, and his arms came up, slow and clearly painful, and wrapped around Ellie Mae completely. When she pulled back, eyes wet, I'm sorry. I should have told you I was leaving. No, Caden said, rough but steady. It was my fault. I should have seen what she was doing long before. His eyes moved to Savannah, warm, grateful. Thanks to the princess's investigation. When they told me you'd left with her, I knew immediately something was wrong. Savannah said nothing. Her chest did an inconvenient thing. It's my responsibility to protect you, Caden said to Ellie Mae, not yours to protect me. Ellie Mae looked at him. But you did protect me. You came. His expression softened and saddened at once. I should have told you, he said, about your father, the truth, from the beginning. Ellie Mae's eyes filled. Why didn't you? Because when you talked about him, Caden paused, jaw working. It was like he was still alive, like I might see my friend again. Ellie Mae went very still. Your friend? Yes. He looked at his hands. He was the only person in my army who told me the truth without calculating the cost. Every time. I sought him out. You were friends, Ellie Mae whispered. I didn't know how to recognize it at the time, Caden said. But yes, he met her eyes. One day there was an arrow meant for me, and he stepped before it. The room held completely still. The arrow hit him instead, Caden said, and he saved my life. Silence. Then barely above nothing, small and certain. I wish he'd saved himself instead. Savannah closed her eyes. I wish I could bring him back to you, Caden said. I would if I could. Ellie Mae was completely still, tears running silently, her hand pressed over her mouth. Papa. Just that. Barely sound, then lifting slightly, working towards something. My papa always said helping people makes the world better, she said through her tears. That must be why he saved you, so you could help everyone. She looked at Caden with clear, wet, certain eyes. He chose you, don't you see? He chose you. Caden's hand moved toward her face, jaw working. He cupped her cheek gently. Sounds like something your father would do, he said. He asked you to find me, Ellie Mae said, and you did. I did. She managed something that was almost a smile. So now you have to keep going. He looked at her for a long moment. Ellie Mae, he said carefully, if you will let me. He paused. I will never stop looking out for you. She frowned slightly, confused. You won't? If you will accept it, another pause, I would have you as my daughter. Ellie Mae went completely still, her face very quiet, very young. I would not be replacing your father, Caden said quickly. Not ever. He was irreplaceable. But I would like to be the next best thing, to adopt you, to care for you as my own, if you'll let me. A silence. Truly? Truly? I love you like you are my own, Ellie Mae. She burst into tears and launched herself at him. He made a sound, pain, definitely pain, but his arms came around her completely and held on, face pressed into the top of her head. Savannah stood. She slipped out quietly, pulled the door closed behind her, stood in the corridor with her back against the cool stone wall. He had destroyed her world. That was true, and it would always be true. But the tyrant she'd prepared herself to hate felt very far away, and whatever had replaced him, she decided she would examine at a later date. She walked back toward her apartments, her heart doing something complicated against her will. Savannah stood beneath the eastern archway watching Ellie Mae chase a butterfly across the courtyard. Blue dress already grass-stained, silver circlet worn crooked, hair half loose from its braid, Princess Ellie Mae. No longer waiting at a crossroads in the snow, no longer alone. Across the courtyard, Caden stood with his advisors. Free from his mother's influence, the woman currently in a cell where she belonged, awaiting trial for treason and poisoning the king. Without it, he had become someone Savannah hadn't anticipated, a man rebuilding his kingdom with the same determination he'd once used to conquer others, not because he had to, because Ellie Mae had looked at him with clear, mismatched eyes and said, "You could be good if you chose to be." He'd chosen. He'd declared the peace unconditional. Savannah's people were free, her sacred sites protected. She didn't have to marry him. She was free to go home. She should feel nothing but relief. She looked at Caden, who had stopped listening to his advisor entirely, and was watching Ellie Mae with an expression of profound, helpless fondness. Armin, she felt something entirely other than relief. He crossed the courtyard toward her. "I hope you have a safe journey home, Princess." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Her smile was careful. "My escort has been well briefed." "Good. A king's duty, after all, to see his guests home safely. You've expanded that definition considerably." A flicker of something crossed his face, then faded. Silence stretched between them. "Peace suits your kingdom," she said. "Yours as well," he replied, and another pause. "I apologize," he said quietly, "for the pain I caused you." Savannah met his gaze. "The past is in the past," she said. "From here, we enter an era of peace." They looked at each other. His eyes dropped to her mouth. "Will you—" He stopped, started again. "Will you miss it here?" Savannah's heart skipped a beat. "More than I expected," she said softly. Something caught fire in his expression. Hope, real and unguarded. He opened his mouth. "And it was never my place to keep you here," he said. An exhale, resigned. "But I am glad you stayed as long as you did." Savannah felt the disappointment land in her chest. "Yes, well—" "Princess Savannah, what are you doing?" Ellie Mae arrived breathless, hair fully loose, cheeks flushed, butterfly somewhere far behind her. "I am going home, Ellie Mae." Ellie Mae's face scrunched into a frown of cosmic offense. "But you are home." Savannah's throat closed entirely. Ellie Mae looked between them, and the careful distance, the unsaid things, with the expression of someone who has identified a problem and intends to solve it immediately. "Families don't walk away from each other," she said firmly. "Little one, things are not always so—" "Yes, they are. Absolute. When you love someone, they are." She pointed at Caden. "I know you love her. You watch her like you're afraid she'll disappear." She turned to Savannah. "And I know you love him. You stare at him when he's not looking." A pause. Only a blind person would not see this. Fortunately, I have excellent eyes." She took Savannah's hand, warm, small, sure, and placed it in Caden's. The contact was electric. "Is it true?" Caden murmured. Savannah looked at him. This man who had been her enemy, her captor, her reluctant ally, and now something else entirely. She couldn't find a single word adequate enough, but he must have seen something in her face, because he stepped closer, slowly, giving her every chance to step back. Maybe it's a very good thing Annie has eyes," he said quietly, because I am only just beginning to see clearly. His hand came up, cupped her cheek gently. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said. I know you owe me nothing, but if you choose to stay, Savannah, I promise you will never regret it. I think, Savannah said softly, I need it, this place. And I, he said, need you. You do? I cannot seem to live without you. Are you asking me to stay? He cupped her face. I am begging you to. And then Caden was kissing her, and Savannah forgot the carriage waiting below, forgot the carefully maintained distance, forgot everything she'd spent months building between herself and this moment. When they broke apart, Ellie Mae stood with her arms crossed and the satisfied expression of a master strategist watching her plan reach completion. Perfect, she announced. Now I have both parents. Caden laughed, warm, real, completely unguarded. Savannah laughed too, still in his arms, her face against his shoulder. There it is, she thought. That sound I've been collecting for months without admitting it. I'm going to be hearing it for a very long time. She found she didn't mind at all, and that is where their story begins. Not with a war, not with a throne, with a little girl at a crossroads in the snow, $1, and the absolute certainty that the right person was coming. She was right. She was always right. Thank you for listening to They Left the Broken Omega Orphan to Die in the Snow until the Alpha King knelt. I'm Evangeline, and these stories only exist because of you, because you listen, you share, you come back. And that means more than I can say. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it tonight, someone who needs to be reminded that the right people show up, that chosen family is real, that it is never too late to become good. You can find more stories just like this every week right here on Kismet Romance Collection. And if you'd like to go deeper, bonus chapters, extended epilogues, and exclusive full stories are waiting for you on our Patreon. Until next time, take care of yourself. You matter.